I don't take on any contingent deals. I think when I started, like most agencies, we start, hey, we want to take whatever we can get. Going into my second year, I made a decision. I'm not doing it anymore. You're just chasing your tail sometimes, and you don't get the respect, nor can you hold a client accountable when they're working in that capacity. And so I made a conscious decision to just go retained or exclusive. And I tell them, hey, if that's not something you're cool with, that's okay. I've even referred some of my peers, such and such is willing to work with you in that way, and that's totally fine.
Imagine building a 7-figure recruiting business in just 3 years and doing it in a niche that most recruiters have never even thought of.
This is one of the hardest industries to recruit for because it's also super fragmented. There'll be times where we're looking for an account manager, let's just call it that. That title there could be 4 or 5 titles for the same type of work. How do you decipher that? That does take a little bit more of the nuance of the industry.
I'm Mark Whitby, and you're listening to the Resilient Recruiter Podcast. My guest today, Tito Cáceres, grew up in his family's landscaping business and swore that he would never go into that line of work. But after building a career in sales and later in recruitment, he spotted an opportunity that others had missed. A $160 billion industry with almost no competition.
I'm hoping to elevate the professional recruiting in this industry. While we do that, it's important to note that most companies, some of them have internal recruiters, but also it's just the use of posting and praying. It's mostly what it is, right? It's just everyone's just like, just post a job, just post a job. And it's just like, what about outreach that's automated? People now are also scared to even apply. And the AI that's tied to applicants is causing people to get disqualified for the wrong things.
In 2021, Tito took a leap of faith and launched Bloom Talent Solutions, funding the business with a credit card. In 3 years, he'd achieved $1 million in billings, and this year he's on pace for $1.6 million.
First year, I don't know if it matters, but I think I built a little over $600K by myself. No pedigree, no training.
Tito is one of our clients here at Recruitment Coach, so I've had a front row seat watching his business absolutely take off. Despite many setbacks, Tito has relentlessly pursued his goal of elevating the landscaping industry and improving the lives of the people who work in it. And he's done so with humility, heart, and a lot of hustle.
I took chances on some family. That didn't work out. I took chances on some friends. That didn't work out. I took chances on some internal recruiters or corporate recruiters. That didn't work out.
In this episode, you'll hear the strategies that have fueled his rapid growth and the mindset that have helped him achieve extraordinary results in a very short time. All right, Tito, welcome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
I don't know why it took us so long to sit down and have you on the podcast, because I guess we've known each other for, 18 months, 2 years now?
I think 2 years now, yeah.
Yeah,
I had the pleasure of attending your first, one of your summits in St. Pete, which is great.
Absolutely. We've met in person twice now because you came back for the second year as well, which, a lot of my work is virtual, and that's great because it's easy, it's convenient for everybody. But I do love connecting with people in person wherever possible. So Tito, tell me your story. How did you get into recruiting in the first place?
Okay. So I got into recruiting kind of by accident. I grew up in the landscaping industry. My family owned a small landscape company growing up, and it was one of those industries. It's blue collar here in the States. It's it's low barrier of entry, and it was one of those things that supported our family, and I learned to despise it. I'll be honest. And so eventually went to school. Dropped out of school, and I eventually landed at a large corporation that supplies commercial landscape services, and it was an awesome experience. One of the best, one of the most renowned here in the States, and had held a couple different positions. I was blessed enough to be a high performer within that organization. They tracked a lot of things. They did a ton of training, and it was, for me, it was kind of the I don't know, it was I always think some of my education unconventionally has been my tuition to take me to where I am today. And so, eventually I wanted more. And, most of my family's got a kind of an entrepreneurial, they're all entrepreneurial through and through. And, it was, I don't know, it was just kind of always in the back of my head. And eventually I started, as I got better within my career in that industry, I started getting recruited by some recruiters support this industry. And had a couple of conversations, and just I don't know, it was intriguing. And within that, as I was a manager, this is interesting. As I was a manager in the landscape industry, I there was a couple of unconventional things to staff up. I was going to like flea markets. I don't know if they're in other
Yeah,
parts, but
yeah.
here, it was
They're
going to a
called
flea market.
they're called car boot sales here.
Okay.
So a boot, your boot is your trunk. So it's like people selling stuff out of the back of their trunk, basically.
There you go. I was literally going to just see if I could recruit people to come work for me, for like frontline
Okay.
workers and such. I mean, it was unconventional, but look, I say all that to tell you, I've always had an affinity to recruit. I also grew up in a religious environment that I was ministering at a young age, and so just the muscle memory of talking to strangers, it just kind of, I guess, it became eventually a big part of where I've gotten to today, and the beautiful career that I've been able to give myself through recruiting. Subsequent to that, I was recruited by a recruiting agency who tried to recruit me for another opportunity for a sales, actually. And it was a cool opportunity. He knew I knew about this industry. I have great glowing references, and so it was just kind of a great progression for him to say, "Hey, let's go have you chase clients within this industry that he started dabbling in." Coincidentally, his background, he had the pedigree of a great recruiter. He worked at Robert Half. He was a top biller for them in the southeastern market at one point, and then eventually kind of started his own agency. I mean, he knew what he was doing, right, more or less. And so I was just kind of a dedicated salesperson for him. I helped this guy started building his agency, started connecting, and he was living offshore, actually, in Costa Rica. He was an expat in Costa Rica. Cool. I mean, he did a great thing there. And but for me, I was the only guy in the States. Kind of go. I started going to conferences. I started going to sales summits, even for my personal training and development. It was a passion for me, and I took that opportunity as if it was my own. And I did really well. I worked with him for about 2.5 years. I learned a lot of the back end of the business of recruiting, of agency recruiting. It's hard, right? And interestingly enough, over the years, I remember some of the things that he was talking about, just like the types of clientele, the types of positions to go after, and that and such. And look, 2020 came. It was a pandemic, right? And I think all of us were affected by it some way or the other. And it was kind of there was a hiring freeze. I said, hey, I mean, what am I going to do? So I actually chose to go back. One of my clients at the time, I asked him if he was, if he was looking, and he gave me an opportunity to be a salesperson. I prefaced taking that opportunity by saying, hey, I knew already that I wanted to start my own agency, and I told him as such. I said, "Hey, this is temporary, and if you agree to this, that's what I'm going to do." Um, One quick point: when I was working at that agency before I took this new job, once the pandemic hit, I rarely did any recruiting, Mark. It was all sales. I was connecting. I was more on just full blown, account executive, and was look. I got a ton of opportunities for him, and it was great. But I never got the other side, which now I appreciate that I learned the harder side, which is business development.
Yeah,
Is I think
sure.
I think on the candidate side, there's something to say about, like, obviously there's a lot there, but nevertheless, the business development side can be a little bit more challenging for many, and especially people that are trying to grow their agencies. That's always seems to be one of the more challenging things to do. And so 2021 came. It was just a credit card, and I was just like, I'm done. This is it. It wasn't. It was the most unconventional time for me at the time. It was September of 2021, and I remember going into a meeting for selling landscape services, and one of my peers who I talked to, I said, "Hey, this is what I'm going to do." Coincidentally, they were trying to recruit me to come join them on the side, and I was just like, we kind of had already built some rapport. I was like, "Look, give me a shot, give me a position." And that was the beginning. From there on out, I started on my own officially. I left that job in 2022, January 2022. I was full time into this. It was scary. First year, I don't know if it matters, but for the audience, first year, I think I built a little over 600K on my
Wow.
by myself. I
That's
was
crazy,
working
Tito. Like your first year in business by yourself, you did 600K. That's wait, and just to clarify, that's permanent. You don't place temp.
all
You're
perm,
placing permanent. Yeah, yeah.
100% perm. And that's
That is
with
insane.
no pedigree, no training. I mean, literally just, hey, I'm here. I raised my hand. I called a bunch of the consultants who I'd previously worked with. Give me a shot. See, I know what I'm doing. They knew that I was already selling the service. So it wasn't like I wasn't already known throughout already a little bit. But obviously it's different from working for an agency to building one. And year one, that was kind of it. Year two, I think we went up to 800. Year three, which is last year, we broke 1 million, and then this year we're on pace to hit 1.6. And in terms of through and through, I would say um, it's been nothing but lessons throughout. A lot of failures. This has not been linear. And again, I don't have the pedigree of many. I know my peers. When I talk to them, I love to hear their stories. I was a top biller at big agencies, and it's awesome to have the mentorship of these amazing recruiters. For me, it was just self-taught. A lot of resilience. I do have some mentors. I've been lucky enough to have some mentors. One of those that's notable for me is one of the I always put him at the top in terms of a sales consultant that was very very critical for my growth, my development, and I've been lucky to have in my corner. But nevertheless, also it's just kind of my resilience through and through, and just like I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm more of just do it. If what I've messed something up and I it's fine. I'm going to figure it out.
Love that. Wow. Okay. So what a ride you've been on, Tito. This is crazy. So, um, couple things to recap here. So it's interesting you come from an entrepreneurial family, and specifically, your family had a landscaping business, and that is the industry that you've chosen to kind of focus on from a recruitment agency point of view. So then, secondly, you had a lot of sales experience, and you were sort of had that top producer attitude and mindset. And albeit initially you weren't selling recruitment agency services or placement services, but sales skills are transferable, right? Then thirdly, it's interesting you mentioned that you come from a religious family where you were expected to talk to strangers from a young age. So and that honestly is one of the biggest barriers that people face in this job is the courage to make cold calls or introduce yourself to whether it's a client or a candidate, someone who you have no prior relationship with, right? Um, so I can see these are all lining up. Then you got yourself some recruitment agency experience and learned from that, and then took the plunge 2022 to do it on your own. So this all checks out. I can see how these multiple different strands come together here. But what's quite unusual, Tito, is your billings year on year, even for someone like you keep saying you don't have the pedigree, but and because you didn't come from a big agency or a big search firm,
Or big
um,
age, yeah, or any
yeah,
agency really
or
that
any, yeah,
has,
yeah.
yeah, a
So
smaller one, but yeah.
you came from a smaller one, but um, to get those results is unusual even for someone who does have a lot of experience. So you're obviously doing a lot of things right. Now I know because we know each other that it has not come easy, and you've worked hard and you've learned a lot of stuff along the way, right, to contribute to that. The headline doesn't tell the whole story, right? And that's always the case. The success, the result, there's a lot that goes that leads up to that, right? That people don't see that's underneath the surface, and that's what I'd love to dig into today. But before we dive into the specific strategies and tactics and the lessons, um, let's just talk about the industry as well, because you are the only recruiter I've ever met in the landscape gardening industry. So talk about that.
Yeah, it's kind of what was going through my head as you were talking here. You know, I love this industry, Mark. I don't say that lightly. It's what I think if you were to ask me why, it's one of those industries that, like, because of the low barrier of entry, and because of the hard work it takes. I remember some of my favorite stories as a manager, was when I was, more or less motivating some of the guys that we were hiring and saying, "Hey, you have an opportunity." And one of the cool stories is, I can't remember, one guy, he went from running a crew to today he runs a P&L. He runs a business, a branch. And this is one guy. 2 years later, I get home one day and I have a box. There's a box. I'm like, what is this? And it was like a watch. He sent me a watch, and it was just like a gift. He's like, I never forget what you did for me. And I've changed so many people's lives, and that was something that was so important and so impactful for me. And then I think the biggest thing
So
was,
wait,
Mark.
Tito, was just to clarify, he was someone who worked for you or
He worked for me, under
got
me,
it?
and I don't know, under me, but he worked for me
Yes,
when I was a manager. And then eventually
got it.
I pushed him to, like, really go beyond his limits, think above what he was capable of doing, because it's just all self belief. It's all it really comes down to. It's all mental self belief, right?
Self-belief,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so I say all that to tell you that I took a massive affinity to it. I not only that, we're talking about an industry that just lacks a lot of professionalism. Again, low barrier of entry. Some of these individuals who don't have a lot of education, management, they do. But when you think of an industry that relies heavily on labor, you're talking 75 to 85% of the industry is made up of labor, and then that top tier is management. So there's a huge range. And for me, seeing the biggest hurdle for any of these companies to scale, I remember, hell, I had to take a truck one day. Hey, we had a crew that didn't show up, or we had this. It was just, so I was just like, man, what? But at the same time, I also got to get to know some of the recruiters, and I'm like, one, there's not enough of the recruiters that are talking, providing insights for the industry. I only gain insights by going on some website, by going on some industry network forum, and seeing some ambiguous comp structure or some ambiguous career path. So to me, it was just like, who is an ambassador for top echelon recruiting at the highest level for executives, for mid-level managers. And again, there's a few agencies that have done it. I'm not the only one that does this. There's, I want to say, maybe under 10 agencies that are known for this, that are within this niche. But I don't know of any that is, like, for me. If you were to ask me, Tito, how did you gain so many sales, or how did look? I was at every conference for the last 4 years. I've been at every industry conference. I'm front and center. I'm not hiding from this. There was this old adage, and especially, again, it's educating. A lot of this industry is just, it's a matter of education. So who's going to take that baton to educate an industry that doesn't know, one, how this is supposed to even work, and two, confront the harsh realities that we have to deal with. Right? Recruiting's not easy. Sometimes bad recruiters, it is what it is. They'll, if you're just sending a resume, then, and people that don't match or anything like that, then obviously people have these preconceived notions. So I wanted to see, how do the best do it? How do Mark Whitby and his clients do it? How do these mega stars in this industry do it? And I took it upon myself to be that torchbearer for this industry. That, in short order, now there's tons of roll-ups. Private equity is running rampant. I mean, is just, there's a publicly traded landscape company. It's one of the, it's over a $2-3 billion, over a $3 billion company that staffs over 25,000 people. And many people don't even realize that. It's a $160 billion industry with maybe 10 agencies. I mean, that's
Wow.
also kind of crazy. So
That is crazy, yeah. But look, you've raised a couple points. So one is, did you know how big the opportunity was before? Like, is that, or is it kind of like you went in it because you had an affinity, you had a background, and then as you got into it, you're like, whoa, this is an opportunity. Do you know what drives me crazy? Paying 5 different vendors for 5 different tools that don't talk to each other. Your ATS over here, your sequencing tool over there, your note taker somewhere else. And now you've got data silos everywhere, and your team has to learn 5 different systems. That's why I'm excited about Recruiter Flow, an AI-first ATS and CRM that's a true all-in-one platform. You get ATS, CRM, email sequencing, AI note-taking, business intelligence, and data enrichment, all integrated in one place. one vendor, one login, one system your team actually uses, and no surprise add ons, jacking up your price every quarter. I'm very selective about who I partner with on this show, and I only work with products I genuinely believe in. Recruiter Flow checks all the boxes. To see how it works, book a demo at recruitmentcoach.com/recruiterflow.
100%.
Okay.
And the more I got to be involved with, like, I've been lucky, by the way, not by accident. Luck does not come by accident. It's opportunity that I took it upon myself to invest in going to these events, speaking to industry leaders, diving deeper into these organizations, really understanding their pain. There's been some industry events where I was just going, we're hanging out at a pool, and and they're all like, "Man, we're dealing with this," and that's just ultimately gave me more insight into the industry, the pains that these companies are dealing with. And something very notable, something very important to know, and what I've realized now, Mark, over the years is this is one of the hardest industries to recruit for because it's also super fragmented. So that gap in professionalism makes it so that, like, it's not, there'll be times where we're looking for an account manager, let's just call it that. And that title there could be 4 or 5 titles for the same type of work. And so how do you decipher that? That does take a little bit more of the nuance of the industry. And so for me, all that to say, and I've tried now to just package that knowledge for the people that come into the organization, because I want to systemize it and I want to make it so that this pod, if you will, this silo, this vertical, continues to grow with and without me eventually.
Love it. Okay. So we're going to dive into kind of category leadership and how you are professionalizing the recruitment industry and position yourself through, sharing market insight with your clients and that sort of stuff. I'm really interested to learn that. Um, Something to note though is, so you mentioned the amount of PE activity that is actually in the landscaping space, and to me that makes sense because if you think about like w- the white collar recession, so called, where AI is, currently and is set to replace a lot of um, white collar jobs. Well, guess what? The blue collar jobs are uh, safe, right, from AI for a long time. You're not going to get AI doing landscape gardening, so it makes sense to me that P firms are like rolling up those companies. So tell me, like you mentioned attending every conference, like hanging out with these leaders of these organizations, learning what their pain points are. How else have you set yourself apart from your competitors and really provided market insight with your customers?
Mm. Yeah. One of the things, service-based industries, and to just also one of the reasons why PE is also heavily into this industry is the reoccurring revenue. I mean, it's just these are multi-year contracts. I mean, for the most part, right? Especially on the maintenance side of things. And so there's massive value in that predictability. And so, yeah, look, uh, number one, because I come from that background, I was also, my raises or came from net promoter scores, the renewal of my work, right? And that only came through excellent customer service. And so one of the opportunities I see, not only for me but other, even my peers, I'm like, guys, even within the industry, it's transparency. And so what we do is we'll send a weekly report. I know some other agencies that's already established. For us, that's a non-negotiable. We want to make sure that our clients know what we're doing on a weekly basis. It's hard, but we need to take credit for that. And I was taught that you take credit for the good and the bad that you're doing because people don't know. And if you leave them to their own devices, they're always going to assume negatively. So that's one of the systems that we've established. And it's created a lot of it's created a lot of great repeat clients and partnerships. And I think that's probably the bulk of our business has mainly been repeat clients. And I've intentionally tailored my business that way. Secondly, I don't take on, and I don't know if, but I'll share it this way. I don't take on any contingent deals. I think when I started, like most agencies, we start, hey, we want to take whatever we can get. And eventually, I think, but within but going into my second year, I made a decision. I'm not doing it anymore. You're just chasing your tail sometimes, and you don't get the respect, nor can you hold a client accountable when they're working in that capacity. And so, I made a conscious decision to just go retained or exclusive, and no, no, no. And if that's, and I tell them, hey, if that's not something you're cool with, that's okay. I've even referred some of my peers, such and such is willing to work with you in that way, and that's totally fine. So that's also been very important for my success and for the agency's success, is that we're not really chasing our tail with these relationships. We're really, it's a partnership, and that's how we look at it. In terms of additional insights, we have every one of our clients, we have biweekly meetings established. That's a non-negotiable. So some of our larger clients, we do quarterly QBRs, sorry, so quarterly business reviews as well. And then the last thing is, I've implemented a I mentioned it's such a fragmented industry. So a lot of business owners, they could be having the same type of business. It's just a landscape business, but they could be structured completely different. I speak to this one guy. I know maybe there's other industries that are the same, but I speak for this one. That's just like, so many operators just going, they can go into a hardware store and buy a bunch of equipment. All of a sudden, I have a landscape company. So everyone's trying to figure it out, and it's all different. It's a hodgepodge. But for us, I'd say our minimum client probably needs to be doing about 10 million in top line, for us to take them on. Just a little bit more professionalism, just a little bit more structure. They kind of know where they're headed. That's also a learning lesson. I was taking on some smaller businesses and such, but all that to say is that we've implemented what we call a performance sheet. And so we pair that. So it's a form. We send it to all of our candidates, and it's basically, hey, this is a little bit of homework. You're not doing an application, but fill this out. We talk about your metrics, talk about some of the technology that you've used, some of your notable hot, projects. Everyone's, and for me, what I'm accustomed to seeing is obviously resumes, right? So a resume and a write up. But we added that element, and it's been super, super successful as well. A lot of our clients love it because it's like, oh, like, it's not just you sharing how selling us on this candidate. It's also the candidate selling himself based on what he's actually performed. And it's harder to lie when you have to write it out yourself, as opposed to telling someone what you've done. And so all those things have been really, really critical. And I'd say a lot of our clients find massive value in all of that.
Love this. Okay, so let me just recap to make sure I'm understanding. So number one, you've realized you've clarified your ideal client avatar, right? And it's those 10 million plus dollar revenue companies. Is there an upper limit, or is it like, do you have like
Yeah, I
massive?
think one of the largest clients we work with now is probably doing 500 million.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so the nice thing is, this industry does have lists. They're big on lists, and and there's a like many industries, right? So many of them, right? For this one, obviously, there's some pride in being at the top 10. So we have one of those top 10 clients, if you will.
Excellent. All right, great. So you're clear on your ideal client. You made a decision that you're only going to work retained in a partnership basis, and you have walkaway power, and that confidence really comes across. So that's awesome. Number three, I love the transparency element with clients and the communication. So you mentioned three things there. One is the weekly report. Two is now you said bi-weekly. Do you mean every other week or?
A weekly report and a bi-weekly meeting.
Yes, the biweekly meeting. But people use the word biweekly differently. Do you mean
Every 2 weeks.
every
Yeah.
2 weeks? Okay, fine, fine.
Every other week.
Cool. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we say fortnightly in the UK, and
Oh,
I think
got
in
it.
Australia as well. So I get you. And then the quarterly business review, brilliant idea. Everybody should be doing that. That's so smart. So you're having weekly, and then twice a month. So weekly report, twice a month update, and then quarterly reviews with your clients. This is brilliant. Um, out of curiosity, what's in that weekly report? Like, what are the headings?
Yeah. So sourcing activity, screenings that took place, and insights of the search. right? And so if we have some clients that have multiple searches going on, different requisitions, different searches, hey, we're seeing, we have a little bit of stalling because comp ranges aren't where they need to be, or this is what the candidates are saying. So that's where it's a good place for them to see what's going on, as opposed to them picking. I was thinking if I was taught early on, and I've had amazing mentors throughout my life. This is not by accident. Um, I remember one of my managers said, Tito, the moment a client picks up the phone, you've lost an opportunity to elevate yourself. And so if you could avoid clients picking up the phone because you're proactive, that's always ideal, right? It's just
Oh, as in avoid the moment they have to chase you,
correct.
you mean,
Yeah.
right. So pick up the
Yep.
phone. I was thinking if you call them, they still have to pick up the phone. But what your mentor meant was if they're chasing you, you've already
Mm,
lost status, right? Because they're having to chase you up.
correct. And so
Got
just
it.
it's all about being proactive, and
Got it.
that's kind of that's the name. I think that's probably one of the best things in I mean, just customer service. And I know that sounds very. What I've learned in recruiting is that I think sometimes, at least I'm going to speak for myself. And again, I don't have the background that some of these people that have, the professionals that are come on here. But what I know is, at least from my understanding, is like there's this fear to break the bad news. It's this fear to be like, hey, we're taking a little bit longer. Hey, this is not working. You know, that's an opportunity, I feel like, to build trust.
Love it. That's a great reframe. Thanks, Tito. Absolutely. Now, first of all, the weekly report, is that like a document that you email, or what form does it take?
It's an email. We thought about, like, and by the way, this is something for you to, for you to know as well, is like I've also had to test a lot of things. Not everything came just. It was just also like the way I look at it is just like, how do executives or hiring managers or people that are super busy, what's the easiest way for them to see something and to actually read it? And so for us, is just let's just email them with a table, more or less, with
Okay,
all
got
this
it. So
spelled
it's
out.
in the body of the email, this report.
Yes,
Okay, cool. So they don't have to open any attachments. They don't have to click,
nothing. It's
read
just
any
there.
websites.
Scroll a
It's
little
in the
bit.
email. Okay, great.
Yep.
Perfect. Got it. Got it. Got it. Um, so the performance sheet, and this is a non-negotiable, you said. So if you're going to represent a candidate, they have to complete the sheet. Um, and you shared the headings. I think this is brilliant because this is the kind of information that recruiters ought to be finding out from their candidates anyway, but many don't. They take the resume and they ask sort of basic screening questions, but they don't find out about accomplishments, what, like, really to try and understand what the candidates bring to the table, what what they've achieved in the past, and so on. It sounds like you're doing that automatically by default.
Look, again, maybe the nature of this industry is because there's so many different types of companies that are structured so differently. And so it's, if you think about I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, but just the way my philosophy was for me to do this was like, it's only a resume or a LinkedIn profile. Those are the two things that, and those are general. I'm not gonna, like, if I'm a candidate, I'm probably not gonna spell out all the details that are specific to, a specific opportunity. So we have different sheets. By the way, we have one for sales, for example. We call that a deal sheet. The deal sheet is just more or less for sales. If it's in, and sometimes, like, just to say, we have a candidate that's like an account manager, I want to switch over to, but I've also done some business development. Great. Here's a deal sheet. So you can fill this out. It's talk that you can articulate your sales metrics in a much more clear way, for even for me to just, it's a package for me to send to the client. It's a portfolio, if you will. And that is, I mean, again, for us, it's been super critical because, I mean, it's, I feel like I can ask a lot of questions to disqualify someone, but to get into the nitty gritty, sometimes people also feel there's a little bit of hesitancy for timing purposes or all the things, or even sharing that kind of information.
I love it. Now, here's a question because I love this idea, by the way. And then some recruiters are going to say, "Yeah, but what if you have the perfect candidate on based on their resume? They look exactly what the client's looking for, and they're not sending their sheet back to you. What are we going to do? Do we disqualify them? Do we put so that's always the question mark, right? Now, and I can see two sides of the argument here, but what's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there will be case by case scenarios, right? Look, and I think it's that is your ability to sell that too, right? It's an easy sell. Hey, I want to represent you in the best possible light. You're not the only candidate being considered. If you want to get atop of that list and be ranked first, do this. This is only going to support your case to be considered as a gold medalist, as opposed to someone that maybe doesn't fill this out and doesn't share this information, and clients can't really decipher or benchmark you accordingly. So I always like to just sell the candidates on the benefits of this. And by the way, I also go and say, hey, by the way, this is for you, man. Like, or ma'am, like, this is something that you can keep for your records to sell yourself for future opportunities, maybe for a raise internally. Did you even spell this out for yourself? Right?
Love that.
It's for your benefit.
Great. Yeah, absolutely, Tito. It's funny, so many problems and, um, you know, so many issues can be solved through better salesmanship. Like, explain it to someone what's in it for them, right? What the benefit is to them instead of just here's a sheet, you need to fill this out, right? Well, I'm busy, right? And so the way you've explained it makes total sense. Because as well, if they can't be bothered to fill it out and other people do, then that sends a message, right, to the employer about how motivated they are about that opportunity. So great. I love this. So, I know that, Tito, you're also the I wanna talk about leadership. I wanna talk about, some of the challenges that because so far it sounds like you've got the Midas touch, right? And like, everything you've done, you've just turned to gold. I know that's not the case, but, before we get into some of the challenges, something also that you're really strong at is building an AI-enabled recruitment infrastructure, which I suspect also is unusual in your I mean, look, that's the minority of recruiters anyway, but and then especially in your space, I suspect that puts you, like, streets ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, look, the thing I want to not give discredit this industry is the use of technology. It is extremely right now. Technology is extremely useful, and it's doing so much for this industry in so many ways. I mean, you got to think like robotic mowers. I mean, even smart irrigation systems. I mean, I can go on and on and on, self-autonomous mowers, these big mowers that could just mow on their own. I heard some technology recently where there's some air tags with some vests, and like they can track everything that something's going on out in the field. So I want to just, and recently there was like this whole AI platform for the industry. So a lot to say about the very fast progression with technology. And look, there are some companies that are already doing some things with like with AI and such specific to recruiting. For us, it's just more for skilled labor. It's just, hey, I can't guarantee that I can't guarantee a frontline worker. I can't. But can I provide a machine that can go and outreach, there's use like automated outreach for these candidates, and they can pre-screen them, and they can do all of this with like AI. Yes, that's what we've done. And that's a great solution for one of the most painful parts of recruiting for this industry. And also very, something very important to note too is because, again, I'm hoping to elevate the professional recruiting in this industry. While we do that, it's important to note that most companies, some of them have internal recruiters, but also it's just the use of posting and praying. It's mostly what it is, right? It's just everyone's just like, just post a job, and it's just like, what about outreach that's automated? How about that? Is that because people now are also scared to even apply, and AI also the AI that's tied to applicants is causing people to get disqualified for the wrong things. And so if it's a more personalized outreach through a system that's more it's more catered to that. That's what we've done more or less. So just that's for
Okay.
that level.
So wait, this is really interesting because my understanding was you're not recruiting the front line, you're recruiting the
I'm
mid
not.
and senior, but you're
Yes.
giving your
Mhm.
clients the platform that they can then recruit their own frontline workers.
Correct.
Wow. Okay, wait. Let me just how did you come up with this idea and how did tell me more about how it actually works?
Yeah.
Like, is this a paid service or this is like a
It's a
value
it
add or how?
it's a paid service. It's something
Okay.
that we've rolled out recently. It's not
Okay.
something I came up with. There's someone that's built this structure. For me, I heard it, I saw it. I was like, let's do this. I definitely we're already using a lot of this automation, by the way. So for all for you to know as well, internally we use a lot of this. I've also, leveraged a lot of your insights and such to implement to our business for all the right reasons, and it's working really well for sourcing, sourcing mechanisms, such like that, things like that. But when I heard this, it's like I want to maintain the high profit margins in mid level to professional to executive search, but who like all of these companies are literally relying on either visas from workers from Latin America, or just posting jobs and hoping to God that someone walks in the door. So it's like, well, wait a minute. I can give you sell the system that does this automated outreach without even hiring. And by the way, if you need someone to like a human, I can provide a human also to manage that for you as well with a monthly subscription. And I could do it 3 months, 6 months, and I mean I could leave it up to them to however long. We're doing it in 3 month chunks. But it's a pretty. We're really excited. We feel like it's really disruptive, and yeah, I can't speak to the amazing results yet. We've recently launched it, but we feel like it's going to be a game changer for us.
Awesome. Love that, Tito. So it gives you another thing to talk about with clients as well, right? So maybe they don't have an executive search right now or an opening at for an account executive, but they're probably always looking for frontline. I mean, maybe it's seasonal, but I'm guessing that's an ongoing. That's where the volume of the need is, right? So if you can build a relationship with them before they have an opening that you would personally work on, and you can monetize that relationship and you're solving a painful problem for them, then that's a beautiful thing because then when you get the searches on top of it, then wow, this is a brilliant idea, Tito. I love it. Um, so can you give any more insight into how that actually works? Because it sounds potentially like a lot of work for you and your team to install that
It
system
it it,
for them.
it is indeed,
Okay.
and on your suggestion, I have it here somewhere. The postcard I did, I sent myself on in the summit last. Was it this year at some point?
Yes. It was February.
February of this year. One of those was one of the things I wanted to do was install a technology integrator. And
Yes.
if I can't tell you how beneficial that's been, it's been the best thing I've ever done. I don't- I love what I do. I love supporting the industry that I do. I love building this business, but that's been critical to build that out. And one of the tools that we use, if I may, so Clay, Lemlist. Those are some of those, and basically we can either install a brand new ATS for these clients with this model, or you could just use our own and then just got kind of give them their own dashboard, if you will. But this machine is ongoing and basically feeding them talent, as opposed to then without us having to. It's not a placement service; it's a recruiting service, a sourcing service, more or less.
Got it. Love that. So yeah, I remember we talked back in February about agentic AI and the fact that you may want to consider hiring a more technical virtual assistant who's going to like take care of that part of things for you. Actually, Tito, I should say we're going to be launching a new course, which is about building these kinds of automations with Clay and other tools. So stay tuned for that. That's coming out in November. But so this might be an appropriate time to talk about what the team like. So you started out, it was just you year one. How has that developed over time to where you are now? Because I think there's been ups and downs with that.
Massive swings. I wish if I knew what I knew today, I would be in a
Yeah,
different place.
absolutely. I know the
But
feeling.
I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? And look, and I'm going to also use this opportunity, just be really vulnerable to say it took a little bit of maturity on my end. I had some growing up to do myself, and I went through some personal things that I had to. That's also can't. It's unbelievable how your whatever's in your mind and some of the things that you have to go through sometimes kind of really affect how you make some decisions. And so really really good place now of a lot of clarity, which is a pretty awesome place to be. All that to say is, look, I took a lot of risks with people who maybe had potential, who my story initially, just because I had no choice, sometimes was just taking on a lot of projects, and I'll help them and I can help them. And it's just like a little bit of, it's much different when you're working in this capacity. It's a completely different level of professionalism. And I think if I could speak to myself from year one, I would say never negotiate the level of professionalism that this particular function requires. It's not a need; it's a requirement. And I think that's now become a more or less a critical search criteria for new talent bringing onto the team, is like if they don't fit the level of professionalism that this specific function needs, you're not going to be a good fit. And so all that to tell you is, look, I took chances on some family that didn't work out. I took chances on some friends that didn't work out. I took chances on some internal recruiters or corporate recruiters that didn't work out. And so I sit here today to tell you that we have gone through a big shift as of very recently, and I'm going. So what I built out is the infrastructure, the back end. As I've got two sourcing specialists, I've got a technology integrator, I've got a recruiting coordinator, and my executive assistant, and these are all offshore. And then my future hires, which I've already got several people in place, will also be recruiters. 360 is the model that I'm going, or at least 270, at minimum 270. If someone's a rock star, I think always a 360 model is, the challenge is always on the business development piece, that people get hung up so much on that. It's like, should it be 270? I'm thinking probably 270. We have so much systems and automations with sales nowadays. I don't know if it's even fair to give those responsibilities to recruiters, because it's like, man, you just launch Clay, launch one of these things, and you can probably get a ton of leads. My opinion. But I do see massive value in recruiters managing their accounts as well. So moving forward, we're hiring with that structure in mind. And again, Mark, a lot of failures throughout. This has not been linear. I've had to look in the mirror a lot of times. Is it me? Is it and I could tell you today, if I could talk to myself 4 years ago, it's like, Tito, hopefully find clarity sooner, know who you want to be, know where you want to go, so that you also don't compromise someone to put someone in the wrong seat or hire the wrong person to later on realize that they're not a good fit. So look, I've shifted a little bit to hiring faster, and firing faster, to maybe hiring a little slower, and then that way, but with clarity in place, first and foremost.
Okay, this is brilliant. I have so many follow-up questions. One being, what have you learned? You mentioned that the professionalism is one of the most important things that has to be there. Otherwise, they're not going to be a good fit. Um, are there any other things that you've learned from the hires that didn't work out that you're applying going forward to your next hires?
People are people, right? And just as much as I have had my own, at the end of the day, I think that the element of people's personal lives affecting their roles is one of those uncontrollable variables. I don't care who you are. But I think testing people's resilience, I think going back to even the structure we have for our own clients, right? We're really good recruiters for our own clients,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But when I think of the premise of our own clients, what they're looking for, and eventually you talk to plenty of executives over the years, you learn that they're always looking for proven performance. If they're plugging a hole or plugging a hole with someone that they need to perform quickly, there is no negotiating past performance. It's either you have it or you do not. And so that's probably the biggest piece for me is really gauging that past performance, because that's going to be really telling of someone's grit. And I think for me, I have that. That's why I'm here today. But I think now it's just like everyone around me needs to be there or above me, and that's how we're going to build this thing.
Awesome. So is the professionalism, the grit, and they're able to evidence past performance. Those are some of the key
One
criteria.
100% for me.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. And so could you clarify some of these terms for me? So what's in between um a, a talent coordinator and a sourcing specialist?
Yeah. So a court. Yeah. So for us, coordination, obviously, interview coordination. I always think it's a it's such a critical part of. Keep in mind for us, it's super critical because our industry, you think of, it's outdoors. So most of these professionals, especially at the mid level tiers, are all 75% of the time maybe they're driving around, they're outside, they're outdoors. And so for us, we have to there has to be an element of like multi-touch follow-ups to really coordinate with them because they're busy. One, they're busy and they're outdoors. They're doing a lot that's not just in front of a computer. So that's why that position is so critical for us. And I found it. She's a gem. She's probably one of the heartbeats of our agency, and I can't speak enough highly enough about her. And then a sourcing specialist is, again, we have to cast a broad net because again, there's many companies, but there's also such a broad. I mean, it's just so broad. I mean, you got a $10 million company as much as you have a 500 billion-dollar company, and there is just a massive amount of people. So we have to. A recruiter can be effective at sourcing, but also for us, I found so much more speed in just having dedicated sourcers that's all they do every day. And I've created a lot of material to educate them. We've got trainings that we do as well, like sometimes ad hoc or sometimes just like, hey, let's schedule some training for them to really learn and understand the industry as well. And that creates a pathway for them to be recruiters eventually.
So the sourcing specialist create the list, but then the talent coordinator sounds like who's actually screening and interviewing the candidates? Is that talent coordinator or is that?
Recruiters.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
got it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We have our recruiters are more or less, yeah, they're fully um uh uh pre-screening the candidates.
Perfect. Okay.
And that's the position that needs to have, an elevated level of experience.
Yeah. Okay, got it. And is that the 270 role that you mentioned that you're sort of got it. Yeah,
Building out now.
absolutely. Fantastic. This is awesome, Tito. So I also wanted to ask you about 2025 because so many recruiters have found this to be a weird year and a tough market. Um, what's been your experience and how? Yeah, what's been the story for you this year?
First half was very difficult. First half was probably the most difficult, I'd say, for my career. But also, there's some nuances for me, for my agency specifically, as we were also helping to support a big RPO, which is also another experience. That's maybe a different topic for another day. Just kind of going learning that and I sit here today to tell you I've invested a ton in the company and in the business, but like also you cannot do it at the expense of your profitability. And that's just it just is what it is, right? And so we've since then we learned a lot of lessons from that. So there was a little bit of a hump for in the first half. And then the second half for us has been fantastic. We've kind of a lot of lag from the first half of the year, and that's just kind of now coming to fruition to end the year. Look, my take is a compilation of AI breaking in. I've definitely talked to some of my peers, and we're talking. There's been massive disruption with AI. There are a lot of companies that are implementing it. I feel like front a lot of entry level positions, interns, those kind of roles. Unfortunately, they're going to be fewer opportunities there because a lot of AI can replace those types of roles. And so I've seen a lot of that. I do think that the world economy has shifted and it's created a lot of turbulence. And we see it, we feel it. I mean, candidates have been just super slow to want to embark on new opportunities. They're asking a lot more questions. There's more transparency than ever, so they're researching. I mean, we'll have candidates as soon as we tell them the name. Give me a second. Yeah, no thanks. Yeah, I just saw. I just did massive research on them. Oh, okay, cool. Um, and so that I think that has created a massive hurdle for recruiters as well, right? And clients too. Now clients are overthinking sometimes. They're getting caught up in some semantics that maybe that wasn't part of their criteria, or maybe it's for the better. But I'd say for in my world also, like with analytics being a big part of all of this as well, has created some disruption as well.
Absolutely. So I think in our previous conversation, Tito, you said you called 2025 a reckoning. What do you mean by that?
Um,
Deep
for
sigh.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would say for me personally, for my agency, it's been a shedding of the old and the more or less going into the new. And that did mean firing some clients. That did mean maybe shifting gears in our model and our structure and how we're moving forward. And that is painful. But you know, I know I'm one of. I'll say this: that pain hopefully is going to yield some better results in the future. I've been also blessed to have some mentors to support me through these really hard decisions. That's been really critical. Being on your program, working with one of your consultants as well, has been super super pivotal. These sometimes you just if you're running if for me it was just like running my business and just not really looking at what was going on, like the actual the metrics, the KPIs, the profitability. And now it's just like if you look at how other just any business really, you got to really think, how is it going to be sustainable? And two, look, I can sit here and dwell on 2025. It definitely was a reckoning for me and just shifting gears, restructuring the right way, just working, really sticking to our ICP no matter what. Um, I think there's massive optimism that just staying active. Like for me, it's also like, all right, cool. Well, that didn't work. Let's see what does work. Let's go into other parallel verticals that are very similar structures. Let's go and for me, I've been involved. I'm the first recruiter within this industry that is writing a column for a magazine, a quarterly column for a magazine as well.
Well, that's
So we've got
cool.
some good press as well.
That's awesome. Is there anything else you're doing from a marketing point of view that you think has helped you to really elevate, be more visible?
Again, going back to just learning some of the tactics that the best recruiters do, just being more active on LinkedIn. I can't speak enough about that, right? Just building the brand. That's been super critical. And that sometimes it's just the basics. Something as basic as that is definitely going to yield better results. I didn't do that before. I wasn't consistent with it. And that's yielded a ton more of opportunities now that I've done that. And again, and the involvement with the so now I've also built like a partnership program for industry consultants. So hey, we have some revenue share partnership programs that we've been able to yield great opportunities from that as well. So that's been
That's
super
cool.
helpful. Yeah, that's been.
What do you mean by revenue share partnership opportunities?
Yeah. So if one of these clients gives us one of these consultants rather, they're working on their fractional CFOs, fractional COOs, that those types of consultants. I mean, they're working with these companies and they're hearing the pain and hiring. So who do you go to? So it's just like if for them, I want to incentivize them also to let them know we're hopefully the go-to recruiter for them as well, that they can trust that we're going to fulfill. And that's yielded amazing results for us. I mean, I can't speak like enough about it. And so what we'll do is just we'll have a small rev share of maybe per placement, or maybe just have like a within a year X amount of placements. Just have some percentages there that are very nominal but enticing enough for them, and obviously for us to gain the business.
That is a genius idea, Tito. I love that. Um, Man, you have so many innovative strategies. It's really, really awesome to see. And yeah, I'm just super grateful that we found each other. I'm not sure how. Was it through the pod? How did you find me?
I heard you in a podcast a couple years
Okay.
ago, and then I saw the summit, and I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck I'm doing, so let me just go to this summit 2 years ago, and then the rest is history.
Awesome. That's so cool, man. So by the way, Claire Ackers wanted me to say hi. She's
She's the
really
best.
she's enjoying working with you. And actually, I've had some coaching from Claire recently. I haven't posted about this on LinkedIn yet. So, because I don't know if you know the story, because Claire was my client when she had a recruiting
Yes,
business. And
yes.
then she became a full-time coach. And then I needed to expand my team. And so I asked her to come and work with some of our clients. And so she took me, she does these like outdoor adventure sort of coaching days. So she calls it a trailblazer day. So we spent a whole day to get now a day of coaching is pretty intense. Like it's not just an hour, it's like a whole day. And it was also hill walking at the same time. So we went up the Cheviot, which is the tallest peak in the north of England. So she's in England, I'm in Scotland. We kind of met in the borders. And so it was pretty strenuous, like physically strenuous. We're picking our way through a bog, like literally there's sheep and there's like pheasants and there's hares and that's about it. There's no
Oh
people.
my
Like
God.
you look 360 degrees in all directions, you just see all these hills and there's like nobody around. It was pretty awesome. And also there's also the metaphor, right, of we're literally like doing something that's fairly challenging and getting to the
Yeah,
summit. And so yeah, that was a lot of fun.
that's awesome.
Um, yeah, Tito, thank you so much for being on the show. I feel like we could go for another hour, but maybe we can do part two. Let's catch up again in like another 12 months and you'll have
Would love to.
smashed through. You'll be at 2 million plus by then. And
100%. That's the
yeah,
goal. No,
awesome.
it's been an honor, Mark. Obviously, I think it's ignorance is bliss. I think maybe that's a little bit of my story too. Just not knowing and just being resourceful has always kind of led me to certain places that I never knew it could happen. And being on here with you is an absolute. It's surreal because this is I didn't think I would even get onto this journey to begin with, but here I am, and grateful to work with you, your team. You guys have been a pivotal part for my growth as well, and the business as well, and where we're headed. We wouldn't have done this if we didn't have the clarity and the technical understanding that's needed. So for that, I appreciate it, and hopefully we'll cross paths very soon.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tito. That's great. Have an awesome weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Resilient Recruiter. I know how busy recruiters are, so I'm honored that you're investing this time with me each week. I don't take your attention for granted. That's why I'm going all out to deliver value for you here, real insights you can apply to improve your business. And if you really want to help me to reach a wider audience and impact more people, please consider leaving the show a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you leave me a review, please reach out and let me know so I can thank you personally. Please hit the subscribe button and I'll see you next time.